many of you know, I am a huge Fallout fan. From the backgrounds, to the posters, to the guns, to me owning almost all the Fallout games, primarily on console. Of course, my Fallout Game of the Year edition, my Fallout New Vegas Game of the Year edition, my Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition, along with the base games themselves before the DLCs ever came out, and yes, even Fallout 76. And now, all the other Fallout games on PC, thanks to, of course, that whole deal. If you got Fallout 76 before a time date and you logged into Bethesda.net, you own all the Fallout games, minus Brotherhood of Steel, of course, on Xbox, the original Xbox with the Duke. So, because I'm that big of a Fallout fanboy, you know that I am a sucker for Fallout stories, especially ones that apparently involve ponies. But we're not here to talk about Fallout Equestria. No, ladies and gentlemen, today we're here to talk about a Wattpad fanfiction that was actually recommended to me after, of course, kind of going through Gate Wasteland for the umpteenth time. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than Poseidon. Now, Poseidon is a interesting one in the fact of it is one of a genre that I have not covered in a long time, and that is, of course, the Displaced Nation genre, or better known as Japan Summons genre, thanks, of course, to the manga and the light novel. And this one, ladies and gentlemen, is, of course, where Enclave, after the war began and ended, the oil rig is basically transported to the world, to this new world, with all their technology and all 8,000 personnel, which include military and civilian. And let me tell you now, the author did good.
Excuse me, what?
Now, as many of you probably know, or you know me personally, or you heard me make comments about it, I don't like this kind of setting for Fallout because, again, there's a lot that can go wrong with it, a lot that can piss off some of the community, and we saw this with, of course, Old World Blues, that Fallout X-Gate story. However, the one that actually succeeded was one which was set during the official later timeline, the official timeline that we know of, or at least the Fallout New Vegas timeline of Gate Wasteland, basically, from Merc, aka Shadow_Trooper. Now, I hear many of you saying, well, why do you like this one in particular? Why is this one getting a free pass when you didn't like Old World Blues? Why I didn't like Old World Blues was because, again, it was using the Gate setting and interacting with the modern world, and just went completely off the rails. So, yeah, I don't like that one, and I probably will not endorse that one or completely read it ever again. But with this one, Poseidon, it's a little different. And I like it because it's Japan Summons, but with Fallout technology. Now, this could have done differently. It could have been basically, hey, the United States could have basically came, and believe me, the U.S. during this time was not a good place to be, even though from many things they want to seem like it was a great place to be, unless, of course, you were Asian, or, correction, Chinese, then, yeah, not a great place to be. But in this case, it's set before with the current sitting president and all his cabinet, who are veterans of the resource wars. And when brought to this new world, it changes much drastically, even in terms of the geopolitics and politics in play. Because here's the thing, this world is completely different. The Palladinia is actually more along the lines of England during the Socialist Revolution, or at least when socialism was becoming a thing. And yes, socialism is in this world and actually does work, because again, there's got to be something that the Americans can vilify and justify and basically pump out their propaganda, and actually justify their anti-communist propaganda. Even during the beginning of the story, the Americans actually are not the enclave that we know. It is not the enclave basically infiltrated by the quote-unquote true society, which actually is from the Fallout Bible, that actually says, oh no, it was Vault Tech that actually initiated the war. And I love that. Going forward even into the story, the technology presented once again makes a lot of sense and actually does line up with the timeline. The F4 Phantom does make sense, and if we go by the Fallout timeline, or at least by Fallout New Vegas, we know that the most advanced weapons that we see in terms of ballistics are basically from the 90s and early 2000s, meaning that it would make a lot of sense that we see maybe a Green Beret or even maybe US Delta rocking something, let's see here, like this. A AR SPR with a Picatinny system and maybe an ACOG on it. It actually would make sense. And again, I like this. Not only that, but a lot of this actually works in the sense of it's not just, oh, they have, of course, G3s, or at least the R91s, which are basically HK33s. We could also discern that maybe they have M16 pattern rifles, or at least Armalite pattern rifles, and many other firearms. And the best part about this is that early on, they don't officially, or at least automatically give out firearms yet. And it isn't until the war begins with, of course, the human supremacist kingdom that then is not only deposed by its own people, but also its vassals deposed as well, or at least declaring independence and joining with the United States as states, creating a new United States. And something else entirely is that when the United States is given its own land, many refugees and those who are disenfranchised with a lot of other places come to the United States to basically begin again. There is, of course, the one secretary who is a part of that true society and is now put in line out of threat of being not only fired, but also executed. Going forward even, a lot more happens. There is, of course, followers of the Envoys of Freedom, and I love this. The Envoys of Freedom basically tell and show that they were in this world before in 1946, and even had more atomic weapons. And granted, I do kind of, but at the same time, I'm not going to put it past them. And again, there is just so much of this I absolutely love. And I'm surprised that the author hasn't explored more with the Envoys of Freedom. I mean, I can only imagine in terms of them needing more people for their armed forces, the Envoys of Freedom would be the first ones to frickin' sign the hell up and immediately swear an oath to defend the United States from all threats, internal, domestic, or foreign. Not only that, but when the hint of actual communism is brought back to them, frickin' propaganda department and the public relations department is immediately going to just pump out anti-communist rhetoric and immediately start stoking up the fears of socialism in people and kind of unite them. And again, there's so much that happens in this that I absolutely love it, especially when the Demon King is now introduced. And yes, you heard correctly, Demon King. Hell, there's even a freaking Pearl Harbor event in this story that I absolutely love. And I already know the freaking conference, the nation's conference of all the quote-unquote superpowers of the world that's going to show up, is going to cause a lot. But let's stick with, of course, where the story actually ended. The story actually ended where the Demon King has now been introduced. And I'm just going to say this now. The Demon King is basically the big bad. And yes, technically speaking, they've done a basically NATO-ish alliance. Basically where if one is attacked, all is attacked. So as soon as the United States, or at least the CIA, get wind of what is going on with their ally, quote-unquote ally, because they got to turn a blind eye to certain things, much like we did back in the day with the Soviet Union during World War II, and a few other allies, they will immediately, and I'm just saying this right now, they will immediately let the public know that, hey, there is this threat going on, and I am asking you as your president for all volunteers. He will not initiate a draft. He will basically want volunteers. And anyone and everyone, especially the freaking envoys of freedom, would, or the followers for the envoys of freedom, would immediately enlist. They would sign the hell up just because, hey, they are basically from the goddess. We need to help them. Anyone basically with two brain cells would immediately realize this is a great threat. This is a threat that needs to be taken care of. And as much as I don't like the idea, because according to the story itself, 5 atomic bombs were dropped on this son of a bitch to basically put him to sleep and take him down. Meaning that if they have to, they could use their ICBMs that they do actually have on the oil rig. Limited, yes, much like all their other supplies, until they can actually start getting their weapon factories up and running to full capacity, as well as their actual industrial might up to full capacity. But this is one of those situations where, justifiably, we can launch a nuke. Justifiably, we can launch an ICBM to take down the son of a bitch, if we have to. Meaning that, in a literal sense, if they have to, push come to shove, they will do it. They will authorize the launch of one of probably their limited stockpiles of nukes. Now, do I believe they would? No, I don't think the author would immediately go to the nuclear option when there is a ton of Fallout technology to actually work from, especially when it comes to the enclave stockpile on the Poseidon oil rig. Because the Poseidon oil rig, if you remember from the Fallout lore, is the headquarters of the enclave and basically had the best and brightest there, either from the industrial industry, the military sector, research and development, scientific, everything. They basically stockpiled this thing up to basically prepare themselves for the inevitable end and then rebuild afterwards. Meaning that if they have to, they can dive into what they have in their stockpiles and see what kind of doomsday weapon they have that isn't a nuclear bomb. And I wouldn't be surprised if they broke out a specialized energy weapon like a plasma rifle or anything of that nature that they may have been experimenting with. Because we know the plasma rifles technically came after the war. So, again, lots of stuff that can be experimented with here and have fun with. And like I said, the author clearly does understand the Fallout series and love the Fallout series. Whether or not he is going to dive a little bit into Fallout 4 is completely up to him. But in terms of where the story can go from here, here's my offer to you, author. Continue the story as is. Obviously, dive a little bit more into the Americanism, the absolute, the pursuit of life, liberty, and freedom, basically. Have a little bit of fun with this, especially with the Fallout technology, especially with things like radio, television, even the propaganda element. I would love for us to actually follow some of the other characters that are not American, who maybe are living in these states and are growing up in it and are actually maybe enlisting in the armed forces, maybe going through training, maybe actually going to the front lines against the Demon King and joining their allies. Again, I would love to see more of the people, and don't get me wrong, politics I know play a big role in Japan Summons fiction and genre, but this is Fallout. Fallout is known for 3 things: its lore, its weapons, and its characters. Politics kind of take a backseat minorly over the world building, over the guns, over the aesthetic presented, of course, in the games. So, in all honesty, I say watch Fallout Storyteller, dive into it, play more of the games, have fun with this author, and don't ever let anyone say this is a bad fanfic. Believe me, I've seen bad fanfics. Old World Blues comes to mind. But if you need good inspiration, or at least help in kind of doing this sort of stuff, go check out Shadow_Troopers Gate Wasteland. Legitimately, great stuff, fun stuff. You're gonna like it. But, again, in terms of just everything else, aside from the main storyline, especially with the Vask, basically the pseudo-German Kaiserreich Japanese Empire type people, you can basically have it to where, no joke, the Americans actually do pull out that old school, not just anti-communism rhetoric, but also anti-fascist rhetoric, and literally go through the whole thing of take down the Bush, take down Jerry, Krauts. Basically, that good old-fashioned, I'll see you in hell or Berlin, whichever one I get to first mentality. And even then, and I'm just saying this now, you can even continue the story well afterwards. You can have it to where maybe big mountains, something happens there, and the United States of that world is actually transported here, and literally the people go into the wasteland and explore what's going on. And they find out about the super mutants, and they encounter, of course, the new California Republic as the new enclave, where, again, this sort of stuff could work. You can combine this stuff even more. You can play with, of course, the storylines and work with the storylines, tweak the storylines of Fallout's 3, New Vegas, and 4. There is so much you can do with this that can actually make it a lot of fun. And I'm dead serious on that. There's even mods you can look at. There are tons of different fan storylines you can look at. There are so many things that can make this work that, not joking, you can have fun with and you can just go all out on. But, till then, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to read this one yourself, pin comment down below, as well as, of course, a comment to our Cash App and PayPal links. It's folks like you that actually make what we do here possible through your donations. And one of our donation goals is actually raising up enough money to actually get a Fallout neon sign to put here where the SR blueprints are, and just make our entire backdrop here all Fallout. So if you guys want to help out with that, consider donating to links down below. And, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Airsoft Hal, the Common Man's Airsofter, who reads, honestly, interesting concepts and ideas when it comes to Fallout fanfiction. And I shall see all you lovely, lovely people in the next video. Till next time. Later.